A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 1, The Boy Beside the Window. I was not born to be a storyteller. All the editors who worked with me said my writing was too messy. In fact, I am just a simple-minded animal, and the 10 years I want to tell are like a bad bonsai. Its branches and leaves are too many, and they give people a headache. In the end, I chose to start from the very beginning. In this way, I can avoid missing anything while telling the story. These cruel 10 years. These crazy 10 years. Nothing can be left out. In 1994, I was 16 years old. My lips were red, my teeth were white, and my eyes were bright. Li Xiaojun was also 16 years old. He had single eyelids and a high nose. He had long, thin fingers and cool, thin lips. He was 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days younger than me. A fortune book says that if a woman is 3 years or 3 months older than a man, they are meant to be tangled together. I saw this sentence 10 years later. It frightened me. Li Xiaojun was a typical bookworm. He was quiet, slow with words, wooden and dull. His face looked cold. After that, I never saw another man's face that could be described as cold. He was my desk mate. My desk was against the wall and next to the window. Every time class ended, I had to wait for Li Xiaojun to leave his seat. Only then could I go out. He was big. If I passed behind him, I always touched him a little. This was something I found hard to say. A 16-year-old girl did not want to have any body contact with an unrelated boy. But Li Xiaojun happened to be a boy who did not like sports. Except for going to the restroom and doing class exercises, he lay on his desk and wrote or drew. His stubborn way of working on math problems was annoying. He liked most to play Chinese chess with the student in front of him during breaks. And I hated all chess games. I felt too embarrassed to tell Li Xiaojun again and again, "Please let me out." So I lay on the windowsill and watched the students from the next class come and go in the hallway. From time to time, I talked with other students through the window bars, like visiting someone in prison. Because we were desk mates, almost every activity put Li Xiaojun and me in one group. This made the 16-year-old me extremely angry. Li Xiaojun's hands were as white as a little girl's hands. In labor class, he simply could not be used like a boy. When we cleaned the classroom, I often cleaned 6 groups of desks before he cleaned 2. At that time, I swore that I must ask the teacher to change my seat. At that time, boys and girls could not talk too much. If they did, rumors of young love would fly everywhere. There were no rumors about Li Xiaojun and me. Because we rarely talked, I looked down on his wooden and clumsy way. He could not understand my sad and sensitive heart. In the first year of high school, the words we said most were, "Li Xiaojun, move aside please." He would hold a chess piece and say, okay. When I was extremely bored, I also watched them play chess. When I did not understand, I would suddenly ask, why does the elephant move diagonally? Why can the horse not move straight? Li Xiaojun's opponent always laughed at me for being stupid. I rolled my eyes and said, if I do not understand, can't I ask? Li Xiaojun always explained it to me very patiently. Slowly, I understood that Chinese chess was so interesting. Slowly, Li Xiaojun's opponent became me. As soon as the bell rang, Li Xiaojun would take the chess pieces out of his desk. Then he would come close to my ear and say, "Let's fight one game." At that time, I was already almost crazy about Chinese chess. In my memory, during the 3 years of high school, I spent about 1 year of free time playing Chinese chess with Li Xiaojun. The beginning of a story often has no sign. Li Xiaojun and I were 16, and we had pure dreams. He wanted to become an international chess master. I wanted to become a famous writer. Our interests had no connection at first. In the end, I was pulled into his world and became crazy about Chinese chess. My dream of literature was thrown far away by me. This caused the difficulty of my telling the story today. I did not ask the teacher to change my seat. My deskmate relationship with Li Xiaojun actually lasted for 2 years. Our head teacher was a stiff old man. He actually did not change my seat for 2 years. Li Xiaojun and I still had no rumors. That was impossible. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 2, The First Kiss Before Goodbye. When I tell the story to this point, I begin to feel lost again, because the small branches of love are thinner than hair. Maybe there is no need to write them all down. The person who tells the story may feel 100 things, but the person who listens may only smile lightly. The things that are heavy like stone in your heart may be passed over by others with one laugh. The red mark in your heart may never become a color in another person's heart. So let us pass over the process. In short, my 3 years of high school were more sour than sweet, because I fell in love with a boy. He was only 10 centimeters from my left hand. We fell in love with each other's young faces. Our love was unclear and hidden. He and I stopped playing chess. We rarely talked. In the 3rd year of high school, I was a whole diagonal away from him. I sat in the front left of the classroom. He sat in the back right of the classroom. I could not even find a reason to walk close to him. But I remembered that he had held the tips of my fingers. I remembered that he had said he liked me. I could never forget the cold feeling of his fingers. When I look back now, I have to admit one thing. I never again had that kind of passion. I never again had that strong, real heartbeat. One day after the college entrance exam, I slept until late morning. I heard someone knocking at the door. My hair was messy, and my face was not ready when I went to open it. When the door opened, he stood there and smiled at me. I ran back to my bedroom like a rabbit. I changed my clothes and invited him in. In my panic, I knocked down the speaker in the living room. It fell to the floor with a low, heavy sound. He and I looked at each other. Then we covered our mouths and laughed quietly. He and I sat on the sofa. I twisted the edge of my skirt. He looked at the TV and kept changing channels nervously. I was almost worried that the remote control would break. There were only the two of us on that hot afternoon. We talked a little, then stopped, then talked again. Being alone together made us very uncomfortable. Even when we talked, we spoke softly like we were in class. That day, he wore a white shirt and blue jeans. His hair was in the Aaron Kwok style that was popular then. Now when I think about it, he really was a handsome young man then. I looked at him and slowly became lost in thought. He said, "Shen Yao, I'm going to Guangzhou." I said, "I know. From now on, we will be far away from each other." He sighed softly and said, "Didn't you say you wanted to go to a school in Guangzhou?" I asked back, "But didn't you tell me you wanted to go to a teacher's university in Wuhan?" One of us went to Wuhan, and one of us went to Guangzhou. We both thought about the other person, and this caused our first missed meeting. We stared at each other, and our eyes were full of tears. He stood up and said, "I have to go back." I also stood up and said, "I will walk you out." He walked in front, and I walked behind him. He reached out to open the door. My tears fell down. Before I knew it, I could not leave this boy. I could not let him go. Suddenly, he turned back. With his eyes closed, he wrapped me in his arms. It was a hot August day, but his fingers on my bare back were still cold. We kissed with shaking bodies. We were clumsy and eager. I do not know whose tears fell. The kiss tasted salty and bitter. We held each other tightly. We could hear each other's heartbeat. At 18, We had our first kiss. It announced the beginning of a long entanglement. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 3, 2 Trains, 1 Missed Birthday. In the first year of college, missing him almost broke me. The person I loved was in faraway Guangzhou. Between us, there was a 14-hour train ride. A round-trip ticket cost 282 yuan. Li Xiaojun and I agreed to meet once every 2 months. On Friday night, I left Wuhan. On Saturday morning, I arrived in Guangzhou. Then, on Sunday night, I went back to school. On Monday morning, I hurried to class. The next time, Xiaojun came from Guangzhou to see me, and then he went back. In 2 years, we traveled back and forth almost 10 times. In the end, both of us could sleep deeply in the crowded and dirty train carriage. Last year, I watched Zhou Yu's train in a movie theater. As I watched it, I cried loudly. The people beside me looked at me in surprise. How could they know that I once ran happily back and forth on trains like that? At that time, we always had endless things to say. It was as if we wanted to show every cell of ourselves to each other. When I went to his school, I stayed in his female classmate's dorm. When he came to my school, he stayed in my male classmate's dorm. To make our classmates willing to help, we gave many smiles. We also did many things for them. In the summer of 1998, Li Xiaojun and I both decided not to go home. We both worked as tutors to make money. We wanted to buy more time together. My birthday was August 8th. In those days, I was looking for work and almost forgot it. The day before my birthday, I received some money for an article I had written. The amount was not small. It could almost cover 3 months of my living costs. I was very excited. I decided not to tell Li Xiaojun. I would go straight to Guangzhou and give him a surprise. On the night of August 7th, I bought my train ticket. Before I got on the train, I called Xiaojun's dorm. When I heard him say hello, I hung up. It was enough to know he was there. All the way, I kept thinking about one thing. When I stood at his dorm door early in the morning, what would his face look like? But I did not know this. At that same time, Li Xiaojun was on a train going the opposite way. He was also leaning by the window and thinking about giving me a surprise. I do not know where our trains passed each other. But if you saw 2 young figures that day, leaning by train windows with happy smiles, that was us. That was 19-year-old Li Xiaojun and his girlfriend Shen Yao, who was 3 months older than him. This was the second time we missed each other. When I arrived at Xiaojun's dorm, someone told me he had gone to find me. I sat weakly on the floor, wanting to cry, but having no tears. I went to the reception room and called my dorm. No one answered. During summer vacation, there were not many people in the dorm, so I kept calling again and again. In the end, an impatient voice finally came through. Luckily, I knew that classmate. I asked her, "Did anyone come to find me this morning?" She said no. Then I heard Li Xiaojun's voice asking her. On the other side of the phone, he asked, "Classmate, do you know where Shen Yao went?" My classmate laughed loudly on the phone. She said, "Wow, even a movie is not this lucky." "Wait a second, your boyfriend is here." As soon as Li Xiaojun said hello, I burst into tears. The old man in the reception room quickly handed me tissues. I said, "Xiaojun, I wanted to give you a surprise." "Why did you go to Wuhan?" He said, "Today is your birthday. I wanted to come early and give you a birthday surprise." On the phone, we blamed each other and felt sorry. In the end, we decided that I would wait for him in Guangzhou. He would take the night train back to Guangzhou. With bits of tissue on my face and red eyes, I sat on the steps of Guangzhou Station. I had not eaten 1 grain of rice. The power of love was amazingly strong. I had only one wish. I wanted to wait there, see him first, and throw myself into his arms to cry. I just sat there without moving. People came and went around me. But all I seemed to see were couples. How happy they were. They could have so much time together. At night, a railway policeman came over and asked me a question. "Girl, are you meeting someone or taking a train?" I looked up and said, "I am meeting someone." "The K57 train from Wuhan to Guangzhou?" He said kindly, "Go find a hotel and sleep. It must be so tiring to wait like this." I shook my head and said, "No, I am not tired." He said, "Then girl, there are fewer people at night, and it may be dangerous. If anything happens, come find me in the duty room." I answered with a blocked nose, Then my tears came down again. I stood on a big stone block beside the exit. I wore a bright red skirt and a white top. I looked for my Xiaojun in the crowd. Xiaojun held me from behind and lifted me down. In the crowded stream of people, he kissed me. He said he was sorry. He did not spend my 19th birthday with me. I cried so hard that my hands and feet almost went numb. My hurt tears seemed as if they would never stop. He used his cold hands to wipe my tears little by little. In the end, we both laughed. He said, "I was like a water tap. When someone turned the handle, my tears came down." Yes, at that time, why did I have so many tears to cry? A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 4, When Love Began to Hurt. Actually, when I tell the story to this point, I still cannot find the reason why we separated. Sometimes, love leaves for no reason, just as love comes for no reason. In fact, we separated. In the 3rd year of college, we broke up. Do not think I am making things up for the story. Who would have the heart, and who would have the courage to tell the years they loved with their life like a dramatic story? When I write this, I want to cry. But there are no tears left. I have said it before. When the passion of love is gone, it is like the dry breasts of a 60-year-old woman. No matter how hard they try, they cannot feed a child. My tears had already dried up in the autumn of 1999. In December 1998, on Xiaojun's birthday, I went to Guangzhou. At that time, the money I earned from writing for magazines could already pay my school fees. I bought Xiaojun a big bag of gifts. There were clothes, socks, a razor, and toilet water. The gifts were small and mixed, but Xiaojun was so happy that his words almost stopped. He knew that all these careful thoughts were love. That night, I had dinner with him and several of his classmates. At the table, I found that he and one female classmate kept teasing each other. Their words came one after another, quick and clever. This Xiaojun was someone I had never seen before. The Xiaojun I knew was gentle, careful, and deep with love. This boy who told jokes and talked so easily felt strange to me. That girl was bright, open, and talented. They even began to say poems to each other at the dinner table. Heaven knew that. I had already thrown all the tang and song poems I once knew to the back of my mind. Back then, I had once been so learned. But Li Xiaojun, when did he start to be interested in literature? When they began to recite Lu Yu and Tang Wan's poem, The Phoenix Hairpin, my face became dark. I stood up and left. I left the whole table of people staring in shock. In fact, there were some things I had ignored. I loved Li Xiaojun deep into my bones. I no longer looked at any other man, and I did not allow him to look at anyone else. I said, "Xiaojun, you are my world. I only have you. I have nothing else. I will not let you leave me unless I die." I was stubborn, suspicious, willful, and strongly possessive. I often called Xiaojun in the middle of the night. If his classmates said he was not there, I could not sleep all night. The next day, I would hold on to him and ask question after question. On the night I left the dinner, I ran alone to Guangzhou station to wait for the train. I still sat beside that high step, with my head against the railing. I wanted to sort out these 4 years. For Li Xiaojun, I had lost myself. I asked for every little bit, and he gave me every little bit. In the end, I found that what he gave was not everything. But I had thought it was everything. I was sensitive and sad. Somewhere deep inside me, a kind of madness was hiding. In December, Guangzhou was hot like fire in the daytime. But at night, it was cold enough to hurt. Half awake and half asleep, I fell asleep at Guangzhou station. In the middle of the night, someone lifted me up. I woke in fear and slapped him. Then I found it was Xiaojun. He held me like that and let me hit him and kick him. I cursed him without thinking. I bit rows of teeth marks into his pale wrist. He did not say a word. He held me and walked very fast. He carried me straight into a hotel room near Liuhua station. He threw me onto the bed. Then he turned his head away and gave a low sound of crying. The long silence made my chest feel tight. I rushed over and lay against his back. I murmured, "Xiaojun, I love you." He slowly turned around. He held me and kissed my eyes, my pale cheeks, and my lips. Then he wanted me. This was our first time. We had promised to leave this day until our wedding day. But we did not. Everything happened naturally. We were young, awkward, shaking, afraid, excited, and wild. That night, again and again, there was blood, tears, and sweat. At daybreak, Xiaojun held my hand. We quietly slipped downstairs past the hotel worker. We stole that bedsheet. On it was the pure red mark of my first night. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 5, The Sweetest Days in Guangzhou. In the summer of 1999, I went to Guangzhou. I was getting ready to find a place for my internship. I also began to prepare for the life Xiaojun and I would have together 1 year later. After that night, we never crossed that line again. We even made a funny promise. We said we would leave the second time until our wedding night. When we said this, our faces looked almost holy. At that time, it seemed true. My days in Guangzhou were full of disappointment. I did not expect work to be so hard to find in Guangzhou. Even short jobs usually needed Cantonese. But I did not know Cantonese. I could speak fluent Mandarin and fierce Wuhan dialect. But I just could not speak Cantonese. Every day, I stayed in the small room Xiaojun rented for me and stared into space. By then, Xiaojun could already speak standard Guangzhou dialect. When he answered the phone, I watched him from the side like a fool. It was like listening to birds talking. I often moved close to listen and find out if the person on the phone was a man or a woman. At first, he smiled and pushed me away. Later, several times, he clearly pushed me away hard. Sometimes Xiaojun would squeeze with me into the single bed. We held each other tightly and tried hard to fight desire. Later, I said to Xiaojun, "Do not come anymore." Xiaojun nodded and kissed my forehead. He said, "Anyway, I will hold you until I die in this life. If I have to wait 2 or 3 more years, I can do it." Then I cried again. My wet tears rubbed against Xiaojun's shirt. The days in Guangzhou were the sweetest days of our 10 years. Every day after work, Xiaojun came back with 2 or 3 green vegetables and some cooked food. He wore an apron and cooked for me. I watched his tall and busy body from behind, and I wanted to cry. When I cried, I would not eat. Then he would tap the rice bowl and say a saying, "People are iron, and rice is steel. If you miss one meal, you will feel hungry." He kept saying it until I finally smiled. Then he gave me food at the right time. With red eyes, we looked at each other and ate quickly. Then we kissed. I was lost in his lips. He was lost in my eyes and my neck. Sometimes when we were walking, I would suddenly stop and say, "Xiaojun, I miss you." Then he would hold me and kiss my eyelashes. The cracks also appeared during this time. I still could not find a job. I had ambition and the talent I believed I had, but I had nowhere to use them. In the blink of an eye, I had stayed in Guangzhou for almost a month. I was a very proud woman. I could not stand such free and empty days. Xiaojun told me it was okay and that he could support me. He was doing an internship at Motorola. He was also quite liked by people there. His coworkers often invited him to parties. Every time there was a party, he said, "Yao, shall we go together?" I lowered my head and said nothing. I did not want to see others dressed beautifully, while I looked tired and poor. I was not only proud, I also had strong self-respect. Slowly, Xiaojun stopped asking what I thought. He only left messages on my pager, telling me he had a party and would not come back. Several times, Xiaojun came back very late, smelling of alcohol. He lay beside me and slept loudly. He did not know that I was not asleep at all. That day, he came back again at 1 in the morning. I lay there in silence. He opened the door very quietly and took his pajamas to shower. I turned over and picked up the shirt he had changed out of. I actually smelled perfume on it. My heart suddenly seemed to fall into an ice cave. I sat in the dark room, my mind completely blank. I looked out at the bright moon outside the window, lost and empty. Xiaojun came out of the bathroom and felt his way to the bed in the dark. Maybe he did not touch me there, so he called softly, "Shen Yao." I sat in the dark corner of the sofa and did not answer. He called again, "Shen Yao, stop playing around. The room is dark. Be careful, or you may trip." As he said this, he reached for the light cord. By then, my eyes had gotten used to the dark. I saw his body moving. I stood up, ran to him, and pushed him hard. He could not stand steady and fell to the floor. He thought I was joking with him. He smiled, got up, and pulled the light on. Then he saw me standing in the middle of the room, with messy hair. Tears were pouring out of my eyes. He looked at me blankly and said, "What is wrong, Shen Yao?" I pointed at his nose and said, "Li Xiaojun, you bastard." He came over and wanted to hold me up. I kicked at him, but I fell to the floor myself. He said, "What is wrong, Yao Yao?" I stood up and rushed at him like a mother wolf. I scratched him and bit him. He stood still and let me release my anger. At last, I was finally tired. I fell onto the bed and slept deeply. When I woke again, I saw Xiaojun standing by the window and smoking. The cigarette end shone in the dark night. I lay on my side and looked at his back. I looked until my eyes felt dizzy. He stood there without moving. When one cigarette burned out, he lit another one. The sky slowly became white. I was tired from looking, but he was still standing there. I called him softly, "Xiaojun." He seemed about to turn around, but then he fell to the floor with a heavy sound. I jumped off the bed and rushed over to hold him. I screamed. I dragged him to the side of the bed. My heart almost stopped beating. "Xiaojun, my Xiaojun, what happened to him?" I shook as I looked for the phone. I did not know what number to call. I shook him and kissed him, but he did not wake up. I fell beside the bed in despair and cried loudly. I thought Xiaojun was dead. I just kept crying and crying. I cried until my throat became hoarse and my tears were gone. Then I found Xiaojun slowly opening his eyes. He touched my face and asked, "Shen Yao, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying?" With a hoarse voice, I said, "Xiaojun, I thought you were dead." Xiaojun smiled tiredly. He said, "I was only tired. I just wanted to sleep. I climbed onto the bed and slipped into Xiaojun's arms. I wrapped myself around him like a snake. He gently patted my shoulder. Slowly, he fell asleep again. That time, on that small bed, we slept for 2 days and 1 night. We were so tired that we could not bear it anymore. I often think that was the best sleep I ever had in my life. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 6, The Night We Could Not Let Go. When I tell this story, I often fall back into the scenes of that time. I write for a while, then stop for a while. I begin to feel sorry for the girl I was back then. I was like a little lost animal. I stumbled forward, and I felt very unsafe. I once had a nightmare like this. A bad man was chasing me. I ran and ran, but then I found a cliff in front of me. I only hesitated for 1 second before I jumped down. Then I woke up and found I was still in Xiaojun's arms. I often cried quietly in the middle of the night. I was afraid of the feeling of running alone. If someone could hold my hand, I would feel safe. Xiaojun said I was like a sharp knife. When it stayed in its cover, it was quiet. But once it came out, it hurt people. When he said this, he looked at me with anger. He hated my bad temper just as deeply as he loved me. The more love there was, the more hate there was. Xiaojun and I fought more and more often. My love made it hard for him to breathe. I was like a mad person. I wanted more and more. Again and again, we fought. Again and again, we held each other and fell asleep. The summer vacation soon came to an end. Xiaojun took me to the train station. He was silent and did not say a word. I stood on the platform and tried to please him by holding his hand. He held my hand, but he held it carelessly. I could feel that he did not want to hold my hand anymore. My face could change in 1 second. My temper came without any reason. In the end, he became afraid. He no longer talked to me. He only cooked for me and washed my clothes in silence. No man would want to continue such a life. But I only understand this today. It is already completely too late. On August 30th, 1999, Li Xiaojun celebrated my 21st birthday with me. Then at Guangzhou station, he told me we were not right for each other. He said we would hurt each other until both of us were broken. I did not speak. I looked at Li Xiaojun with calm eyes. This scene had appeared in my dreams many times. It had woken me from sleep many times. Today, it finally became real. It became helplessness and pain that I could touch. At that time, Li Xiaojun carried my luggage on his shoulder. In his hand, he held a big bag of fruit he had bought for me. Suddenly, I found it funny. Even now, Li Xiaojun was still doing a boyfriend's work for me. Like a camel. But how could he say the words break up? At least, he should have been a little cruel. At least, his face should have looked final. But he looked at me gently. He looked at me with pity and pain. He looked even more painful than I was. At last, I could not help it, and I laughed. I laughed until I held my stomach and rolled around. Li Xiaojun put the luggage on the ground. He said one sentence, "Shen Yao, do not be like this anymore. I am already tired of watching it." I stood up and slowly put the luggage on my shoulder. I held the bag of fruit against my chest. I walked with big steps toward the train carriage. I did not look back. I sat in the sleeper carriage, holding my luggage like a fool. My eyes were empty. 1 minute before the train started, I jumped off. All my luggage was left on the train. I only carried a bag across my body and searched for Li Xiaojun in the crowd. In the end, I leaned helplessly on the footbridge at Guangzhou station. The sky was already completely dark. I walked step by step, slowly and weakly. I walked to the exit where I had once waited for him. And there, as if it was meant to be, I saw him. He was squatting beside that stone block and smoking hard. I stood 1 meter away from him and waited for him to raise his head. I waited until my feet went numb, but he still did not raise his head. I clearly saw the cigarette end burn his hand. When I was almost going to faint, he finally stood up. He brushed the cigarette ash from his clothes. Then he saw me. He walked to my side and reached out to hold my hand. I let him pull me along and walked with my eyes closed. He pulled me to the roadside to get a taxi. I asked him, "Where are you taking me?" He did not make a sound. I said, "Xiaojun, I still have to leave tomorrow. I have to go back to Wuhan. I just want to spend the last night with you. I do not want your pity. I do not want it." As I spoke, I became hysterical. I waved my arms and said loudly, "I will not cling to you. I did not jump off the train to cling to you." Then, uselessly, I cried. In a low voice, I said, "I only forgot what it felt like to sleep in your arms." He pulled me into his arms all at once. He breathed hard, and his voice sounded like crying. "Yao, Yao, 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 I love you. I do love you." He almost carried me under his arm back to our small room. The room was empty. Only the mattress was left on the bed. He pressed me down on the mattress and kissed me desperately. I felt as if I was almost sick from his kisses. My tears were no longer so many. A person's tears really have a limit. One day they will run dry. He held me and kissed me inch by inch. Like a child, he cried as he wanted me. His tears fell on my chest, drop by drop. Many years later, I can still almost feel the heat of those tears. We knew each other's bodies so well. As if we were born to fit together. I saw beautiful wildflowers blooming on the ceiling. They bloomed with a clear, strong sound. My nails left bloody marks all over Xiaojun's back. We wanted each other in despair. On that bare mattress, we left the last passion of my life. The next day, I calmly went to the airport alone. I took the earliest flight back to Wuhan. That was the first time I had ever taken a plane. I decided that I would never go to Guangzhou station again in my life. At that time, Li Xiaojun was sleeping sweetly on the mattress in the rented room. His arm lay open by habit, as if I were still in his arms. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 7, The Child I Never Held. When I wrote to this point, I showed this part of my life to a friend. He said nothing. He held the printed pages and cried as he read them. He said, "Those years were hard for you." I smiled. I told him, the hardship had only just begun. When Xiaojun was beside me, even pain tasted sweet. I brought it on myself. With a rope called love, I murdered the person I loved. After I returned to Wuhan, I threw away my pager. I moved to another dorm. Xiaojun called me, but I did not answer. I asked my classmate to tell him that I had left school. Xiaojun did not come to Wuhan to look for me. I understood that he was tired. He was tired of my willfulness. I missed him, but I forced myself to forget him. He was tired of me, and I had too much pride. I would not shamelessly go to him. I would not. 20 days passed. I had serious insomnia. A long line of blisters grew on my mouth. I almost did not eat. I began to hate him. That morning, I finally could not get out of bed. I lay on the dorm bed and felt as if I was going to die. I struggled up to cook a bowl of instant noodles. When I tore open the package, I wanted to throw up. I could not stand the smell of the noodles. I took my lunchbox and went to the dining hall to buy food. As soon as I entered the dining hall, I wanted to throw up again. I turned back and went outside the school gate. I bought a bowl of cold rice noodles with a lot of chili. I squatted by the road and ate it quickly. When I returned to the dorm, the food came back up. I ran to the bathroom and threw up everything I had eaten. I straightened up beside the tap and thought, do I have anorexia? I went to the hospital. I was told that I was pregnant. When I walked out of the hospital, I almost could not feel the ground under my feet. I almost floated back to the dorm. There was a life inside my body. It made me afraid and sad. I had never thought that I would become a mother at 21. I was still a child myself. If I did not lean against someone's chest for one day, I felt unsafe. Almost every morning, I threw up once. My body became terribly thin. My classmates slowly began to whisper about me. While I was still wondering whether to keep the child became more and more real inside me. After one sleepless night of struggle, I decided to keep the child. My love for Li Xiaojun had turned into deep hate. I wanted to give birth to this child. I wanted to take the child to find him. I wanted to ask him how he could let me hurt so much. I had completely become a mad person. The child became a tool for me to hurt him. Many times I imagined myself bringing a child who looked like him to stand before him. I would smile and tell him, "This is your child." Then I would look at his painful face. I would laugh sharply and coldly. From October 1999 on, I became a knife out of its cover. As fast as I could, I contacted a famous beer group in Shenzhen. Then I wrote an application to my school to start my internship early. On October 10th, I stood on a street in Shenzhen. My workplace was a big seafood restaurant. I became a beer sales promoter. I wore loose clothes. I wanted to earn some money as quickly as possible. Before my belly began to show, I would leave there. I would find a quiet place and wait for the birth. Shenzhen was only 2 hours from Guangzhou by train. I was only 2 hours away from Xiaojun. There, I worked fiercely. I even smiled sweetly at customers and made unclear jokes with them. I looked like a cheap woman as I held every coin tightly in my hand. I also had to bear the strong reactions of early pregnancy. Every 10 minutes, I went to the bathroom to throw up. I could not look at anything yellow. If I saw it, I threw up. That feeling is hard for me to describe in words. I have said that I was not born to tell stories. Now I feel that telling this story becomes harder and harder, because no adjective can express how I felt then. I was angry and wronged, but I also carried a woman's natural kindness. I felt more and more love for the life inside my belly. In the end, I thought, I will find him a father. When he is born, he can see a broad shoulder at once. Thinking this, I often became lost in thought. By then, I no longer cried. I gave my child many names, such as Shen Ke, Shen Tian, and Shen Yao. Like a real young mother, I went to bookstores to read books for pregnant women. I stopped staying up late. I drank a lot of healthy soup, but I just could not get fat. In the blink of an eye, the child was 4 months old, but my belly was still flat. Everyone in the company still treated me like a young worker. I carried 12 bottles of beer back and forth by myself. No one knew that my waist almost could not straighten. On December 25th, 1999, I fell down the stairs at Shenzhen Carnival Seafood Restaurant. Blood ran down the high walking stairs, winding like my youth. My child was gone. That small life was the only mark my youth had left on my body and skin. With one light fall, it died before it could be born. I remember the empty operating room. I remember the blue screen and the high delivery bed behind it. I remember the cold medical tools moving inside my body. I bit my lips tightly. The gynecologist was about 50 years old. She looked at me kindly and said, "Child, you can cry out. If it hurts, just cry out." I did not cry out. My lips began to bleed. The doctor wiped the sweat from my face. At last, she said, "What a pity." It was a boy, almost 5 months old. If you had not fallen, this would not have been needed. As she put away the tools, she asked, "Do you want to look at him?" I shook my head hard. Then I passed out. When I write to this point, I collapse on the desk as if all my strength is gone. My pity for that Shen Yao becomes stronger and stronger. I even do not think she was me 5 years ago. I want to reach my arms into the winter of 1999. I want to give Shen Yao a warm hug. I want her to sleep one more sweet sleep in my arms. How did I walk through it? How did I bury the past? Or am I really only writing a story with false blood flowing through it? But I clearly saw the weak Shen Yao walk out of the hospital door. She carried simple luggage in her hand. At the hospital gate, she saw a group of people playing Chinese chess. She moved closer to watch them. It was as if she had gone back to 5 years before. In high school, during breaks, she used to watch Li Xiaojun play chess with others. She squatted by the road and solved a chess problem. She won 50 yuan. Holding that 50 yuan, she thought, "Xiaojun, how much have you hidden inside my life? I am still making money with the skill you gave me." When I returned to the dorm, I learned that everyone in the hotel had heard I was pregnant before marriage. I was fired. Under other people's eyes, I raised my head and packed my things. I could not stay there anymore. I took out all the money in my bank book. I went to Guangzhou station. After I bought the ticket, I called my best friend Mantu and asked her to meet me in Wuhan. Then I had only 2 yuan left in my hand. I was very hungry. I bought 1 piece of hammy melon on a bamboo stick. With messy hair, I stood at Guangzhou station like a migrant worker. My Guangzhou station. All my sad memories were at Guangzhou station. While I was lost in thought, a beggar took my hammy melon away. I got on the train hungry and slept all the way. I had become numb with sadness. When I arrived in Wuhan, the first thing I did after seeing Mantu was pull her toward a noodle shop. With tears in her eyes, Mantu watched me eat 2 big bowls of noodles. She held my red frozen hands and rubbed them warm. In Wuhan, heavy snow was already falling everywhere. I wore only a thin jacket. My face was covered with goosebumps from the cold. Mantu and I had been classmates for 10 years. I hid nothing from her. She was my only female friend. But she knew nothing about what happened to me in Guangzhou. No one knew. Like a cancer patient, I had hidden my deadliest wound. Mantu took me to her place. At that time, she had already started working. She rented a single room. It was clean, neat, and warm. The room was filled with a light smell of flowers. It felt like home. She put money into my wallet. It was a thick stack. Then she took out a bag. Inside, it was a beautiful coat. I said, "I do not want it." She looked into my eyes and tears shone in hers. She said, "Yao Yao, from today on, you must live for yourself. What I can solve are only material problems. The other problems must be solved by you." I did not know that 3 days before, Li Xiaojun had stood in Mantu's room. With red eyes, he had said to Mantu, "Xiao man, do you know where Yao Yao is?" Mantu had said fiercely, "Now you remember to look for her? How could you let her hurt so much? She may be wandering alone somewhere now." Li Xiaojun begged Mantu to give him a clue so he could find me. Mantu gave him my address in Shenzhen. The day Li Xiaojun went to Shenzhen was the day I left Shenzhen. Maybe we passed each other again on some train? This missed meeting made Li Xiaojun finally let me go, because my lovely old coworkers described me as a bitter woman who had been kept by someone and then thrown away. They described the bloody way I looked when I fell. At that time, what was Li Xiaojun like? What was the expression on his face? All of that became a riddle. For 5 years, I never stepped into Guangdong province again. That place was my hell. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 8. After the pain, I tried to live. When I tell this story, I leave out many people. They passed through my life only for a short moment. For example, in the hotel in Shenzhen, there was a boy. He secretly put notes into my hand. He put roses on the window bars of my dorm. It was not that I did not see it. It was not that I was not moved. But I hurt him cruelly. Under the streetlight, I asked him, "You are only a waiter. What do you have to love me with?" In the dark night, his face became red. He breathed hard and then turned away. Later, we passed each other many times in the hotel. His eyes were full of anger and dislike. Later, he left the hotel. Later still, I heard that he started a company. Later, and later still, I heard that he had become a little famous in Shenzhen. I often think of him. He was a good boy. He should have found a clean and pure girl. Another boy was from Jiangmen. His home was across the water from Hong Kong. It looked at Hong Kong from far away. We met on the plane to Wuhan. Yes, it was the flight when I returned to Wuhan from Guangzhou. He would stay in Wuhan for 1 month for work. He sat beside me. I sat there with red eyes and stared into space. From time to time, he tried to talk to me. It was my first time on a plane, and I threw up badly. He kept helping me. He was even more careful than a flight attendant. We took a taxi together from the airport to the city center of Wuhan. He gave me his phone number. I knew he had fallen in love with me at first sight. He came to my school to find me. He invited me to dinner. I refused lazily every time. He had a powerful family. He had a good education and a decent job. He took me shopping. If I stopped in front of something for more than 3 minutes, I would surely receive it as a gift one day. He was extremely romantic and extremely gentlemanly. When he returned to Guangzhou, I went to the airport to see him off. At the airport, he asked me shyly, "Miss Shen, if you are willing, will you think about being my girlfriend?" I smiled. I said, "I sent you an email. When you get back to Guangzhou, you will know my answer." In that email, I told him everything. When he flew back to Wuhan to find me, I had already gone to Shenzhen. When he finally found my address in Shenzhen, I had already left Shenzhen. Because I looked at the bright moon in the sky, I missed a flying bird in the human world. In 2003, we actually met again in Beijing. At that time, there was already a beautiful, smiling woman beside him. We greeted each other politely. He turned his back and smiled sadly. Let me take a breath before I talk about Shen Yao again. I pull myself out of the story. I pretend that Shen Yao is only a woman with the same name as me. I pretend that she only has a similar past. A new century began. On New Year's Eve of the millennium, fireworks bloomed across the sky like flowers. They were especially beautiful and wild. Mantu and I sat on the balcony railing. She asked me if I still hated Li Xiaojun. I was silent. I thought of my dead child. I thought of all the cold looks I had seen. I bit my teeth and said, "I hate him." Mantu said nothing more. It was this word, hate, that made Li Xiaojun and me miss each other again. Before Mantu asked me that question, Xiaojun had said to her on the phone something else. "Xiao man, I have decided that Yao Yao must tell me with her own mouth. What happened to her? How could she treat herself like that?" Mantu shouted at the phone, "Li Xiaojun, I also want to ask what you did to Yao Yao." Mantu held me and gently patted my shoulder. She said, "Yao Yao, forget Xiaojun and start again." Youth is bitter by nature. I fell asleep in Mantu's arms. In my dream, I saw Xiaojun standing on the other side of a big river. I stood on this side and shouted his name until my voice broke. He did not answer. I had this dream for 3 full years. I had it until I became tired of it. That night, Mantu called Xiaojun. She calmly told him, "Shen Yao hates you. Please do not disturb her quiet life again." but I did not know any of this. We missed each other again. Which time was this? Those years moved as slowly as a snail. I almost never smiled. I often stayed on the bus past my stop. I poured laundry powder into the toilet. I cut my hand while cutting vegetables. I cooked rice and forgot to add water. My life was a complete mess. I was like a useless person who had lost the ability to live. I lived in a small attic near Hanzhong Street. Every day, I left early and came home late for work. On weekends, I sat on the terrace and read the newspaper. I read from dawn until dark, but I never turned one page. I did not speak for whole days. At last, when I did speak, I felt it was someone else's voice. I found jobs, but I was often fired within a week because I was too dull and often made stupid mistakes. In the burning heat of June, I looked for work. My skin became dark from the sun. I stood on the streets of Wuhan and looked at huge billboards. I felt dizzy. I had almost nothing to be proud of. I had wasted 4 years. I had not learned my major well. At last, one company wanted me. They liked my young and clean face. Every day, I stood in the company hall. I wore a neat suit and proper makeup. I looked like a living sign for the company. Sometimes dirty customers made rude jokes. I only had to smile calmly, and everything was okay. Life seemed to slowly show a smiling face. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 9. One word between us. In 2000, I lived in a confused way. No news of Xiaojun came to me. In 2000, my path was only from work to the dorm. I never crossed that line. The year 2000 was very important, because when I almost seemed to walk out of the dark clouds, Xiaojun appeared. Li Xiaojun appeared. A wound that looked as if its blood had dried was stabbed again. On November 12th, 2000, after work, I got a call from a high school classmate. She said a group of Wuhan classmates were having a gathering at a hotel and were waiting for me. When I arrived, everyone was already there. A group of people were joking loudly. I sat in a corner and smiled quietly. During the meal, someone answered a phone call. He covered the phone and asked everyone, "Hey friends, guess who is here?" The classmates guessed one after another. The classmate on the phone said mysteriously, "The current excellent employee of Motorola, Li Xiaojun, has come back to Wuhan." Before his words even ended, the private room door was pushed open. The person I missed day and night stood in front of me just like that. My head exploded with a loud sound. In the loud voices of the room, Xiaojun also saw me. Across all the noise around us, we looked at each other. My love, he was still tall and straight. The chest I missed was still broad. His eyes, his brows, and his cold fingertips were still the same. His thick, slightly curly hair was still the same. The red mole behind his ear was still the same. How much I wanted to walk to him. How much I wanted to lean on that chest and cry freely. Xiaojun only looked at me once. Then others held him down and made him drink as punishment. He drank glass after glass of strong white liquor. He drank until his neck became red. I just sat there stiffly and looked at him. Across the round table, I looked at him. I looked at Xiaojun, who had left a mark on my life that could never be erased. He did not look at me again. He did not say one word to me. After dinner, we went to another classmate's home to continue the gathering. I was pulled there by force. Xiaojun was in another car. My classmates did not let us sit in the same car on purpose. They knew the awkward past between Li Xiaojun and me. They thought the clouds had cleared between us. But who knew that my heart was breaking apart? 8 people played at 2 card tables. 1 table played poker, and 1 table played mahjong. Li Xiaojun and I were at the same table. He sat across from me. All night, we said nothing. I lost 300 yuan and he lost 400. We really said nothing. When the sky became light and he was leaving, he finally said one sentence. Shen Yao, please pass me my coat. He said this sentence so lightly and easily. When we were together, he often asked me to do things for him. Shen Yao, bring me my coat. Shen Yao, bring in my leather shoes. Shen Yao, bring me my tie. For one moment, I still had an illusion. It was as if we were still deeply in love. It was as if I could still run into his arms at any time and act spoiled. It was as if I could still hang on his neck like a child on a swing. It was as if everything was still possible. But it was only as if today there was one more word before what he said. The word was please. That one word pushed away all our fierce and burning past. My Xiaojun had already turned the page on me completely. He was no longer the person waiting for me in the same place. Although I had wasted all my green youth for him, I went back to my place. I took out all the things I had kept with traces of Xiaojun on them. One by one, I touched them under the weak winter sunlight. There were the hair clip and brooch he gave me. There were all the train tickets from Wuhan to Guangzhou. There was the plane ticket from Guangzhou to Wuhan. There were the notes he wrote to me. There was the phone book with his handwriting in it. There was his tie clip and his cold medicine. There was the receipt for the pager he bought. There were our rent receipts. And there was the bedsheet from our first intimate night. I spent a whole day looking at these small things. As I looked, I began to wipe my tears. Then I began to sob. Then I began to cry loudly. After 1 year, I finally cried out loud. I missed Xiaojun. I thought he also missed me. I was in pain because I missed him. I thought his pain was even deeper. I thought we would still be together. I thought he would come to hold me as he used to. I thought he would kiss my eyelashes. His lips were thin and cool, and his eyes were bright. I thought he would say, Yao Yao, I love you. I still love you. I thought I could throw myself into his arms again. I thought I could willfully bite marks into his shoulder. I wanted to fall asleep in his arms. I wanted to have a dream with warm spring flowers. I wanted a dream with changing seasons. I wanted a dream with waves wetting the shore. Everything had passed. He could politely say please to me now. He did not look at my thin and tired face. In 1 year, I had lost 10 jin. My wrists were so thin that the blue veins were clear. He did not look. When he left my sight, he did not even turn back. Behind him, I almost fainted. He did not know. There were so many details he did not know. With red eyes, I went to the company and resigned. Then I bought a plane ticket to Beijing. I wanted to find a corner and lick my wound. Not Wuhan, not Guangzhou, and not Shenzhen. I chose Beijing. There, the 4 seasons were clear. In winter, the cold went deep into the bones. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 10. A Lonely Winter in Beijing. In December 2000 at Capital Airport, the cold wind was sharp. I carried a small suitcase and walked into the crowd. At that time, my face was calm. My eyes were no longer clear and bright. My straight hair just reached my shoulders. The only thing that did not change was the color of my lips. They were still like a baby's lips. I insisted on using no lipstick or lip gloss. I kept this loyalty for him for 6 years, the same every day. I rented a room in Gongzhufen. I painted it a soft pink. In the room, I burned light Dharma incense. On the windowsill, I placed green leafy plants. On the dining table, I kept 2 fish playing in a fishbowl. Every day, I traveled between Guomao and Gongzhufen. I got used to sleeping while holding the handrail on the subway. I got used to wearing stiff business clothes. I got used to a life without Xiaojun. It seemed that I was getting farther and farther away from Xiaojun. I no longer contacted my classmates in Wuhan. I bought a Beijing mobile number. My phone book was full of my Beijing friends. 3 months later, I could speak fluent Beijing dialect. Even Beijing people did not know where I came from. They could not imagine that I once spoke fierce Wuhan dialect. They also did not know that I could understand every sentence of Cantonese. I smiled in a reserved way. I talked with clients in a gentle way. It seemed that I was born for work. But night was a difficult pass. I had a habit. At night, I cried once on the terrace. I cried freely and fully. Then I wiped away my tears and went back into the room. I got under the quilt and fell asleep while sobbing. I depended on this release once a day like a baby. Sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night. I had nightmares and woke up shaking all over. I held my own arms and stood on the terrace. The Beijing night was as cold as water. The cold hurt my bare skin. I often stood there for half the night. When I woke in the morning, I got up quickly. I hurried to the subway station and started another day of work. No one knew that my secret nights were so broken. There was no other reason. I was only lonely. On weekends, I played Chinese chess with people in the community activity center. I used it to pass the time. My Chinese chess became better and better. In the community, I could almost rule the chess tables. Only when I played chess could I think of nothing. I kindly gave advantages to the old men. I made them laugh. The old men were like children and cared about every move. So I let them take more moves again and again, but I still won. I stayed in the activity center for a whole day like that. If there was sunshine, I pushed old people with weak legs out for a walk. I listened to them talk about old Beijing stories. Their love for me was more than I had imagined. For a while, clothes hanging in the community were often stolen. But my clothes were never lost. Whenever I washed my clothes, they chatted near the clothesline. They stayed there until the clothes were dry. Then they took them down for me. Every time I came back from work and saw clothes on my door handle, I wanted to cry. Those clothes smelled of sunlight. If you give love, you will surely receive more love. But I gave Li Xiaojun so much love. What I received was pain that cut into my skin. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 11, Before I Said Yes. Do you think I will still tell all those processes? No. I want to end this memory. Those details become sadder the more I peel them open. No wound can bear being described again and again. Once it is opened, everything looks shocking. Let us only talk about what happened later. Every story that begins with before will have a later. Later, in January 2003, a man named Su Qi stood on the crowded street of Wangfujing. He said loudly, "Shen Yao, marry me. I will not allow you to cry anymore." Su Qi had clean eyes. His skin was white and his fingers were long. He was thin and weak, but he said he wanted to protect me. I tried to hold his arm. I leaned against his chest. With my eyes closed, I tried to feel warmth. I said to Su Qi, give me 3 days. Only 3 days. I will give you my answer. Su Qi wrapped my hand in his big hands and said, I will wait. Those 3 days, I used them for one flight. The flight was at night, and all I saw was darkness. I stood at Baiyun Airport. My ears were full of familiar, strong Cantonese. It felt like another life. I called a taxi. Slowly, it drove into the heart of Guangzhou. Every small bump made my heart shake. The young and shy driver asked me, "Miss, where are you going?" I said, "Please take me around." "Anywhere is fine." "Then what?" He asked me again. I sat in the back seat and looked at the flashing neon outside the window. I said. Then we go back to the airport. The driver looked at me in surprise from the rearview mirror. I smiled and explained. I just forgot the smell of Guangzhou, so I flew here to smell it again. When I returned to Beijing, it was early morning. In the cold early spring of January, I called Mantu. I asked her if she knew where Li Xiaojun was. Mantu was silent. Then, word by word, she told me. Li Xiaojun's wedding date is set for May 1st. After I hung up, I sat by the road and stared into space. Then I slowly and painfully stopped a taxi. The taxi moved slowly on the third ring road. Traffic jams were common in Beijing. I pressed against the window and looked outside with nothing to do. A man in a navy blue suit stood beside a Passat. His figure looked very much like Li Xiaojun. As if I were under a spell, I jumped out of the taxi. Just after I got out, I saw the man get into the car. Then the car slowly began to move. I ran toward it as fast as I could. The traffic began to move. It moved faster and faster. I was completely left on the third ring road. Cars passed by me one after another. Again and again, I was left behind. I seemed to see time rushing past me. I stood in the moving traffic with tears all over my face. 3 days later, Suki and I stood at the marriage registration office. A Woman's 10 Years, Chapter 12. Please don't call my name. Xiaojun, if one day you read this writing, please believe that this is everything. My 10 years. The 10 years I gave to you, I will no longer ask how you could let me hurt so much. In the end, we must forget each other in the wide world. The floating clouds and the affairs of the world, let them move farther and farther away. If we can meet again, please do not call my name. Because I promised Suke that I would walk through this whole life with him.